Well, NPOs here in Gauteng, by the way, are reportedly facing funding challenges. Some are looking after the elderly, people with disabilities, and some offer home-based care services. And their monthly grants were halted by the provincial government to clean out corrupt activists within the sector. Newzroom Afrika's Ziniko Mhlaba has the story and joins us now live. Ziniko, good morning. It is distressing while on the one hand wanting to make sure that the money is going to the right place. The other is, those who desperately rely on this money as a lifeline now having to do without. How's the story playing itself out by those directly affected?
Good afternoon, Iman. Good morning, Iman. Well, I can tell you that from the people we've spoken to about this subject, especially those that are affected, are saying that, well, the issues seem to be in the administration process of the funding processes, and also blaming government in terms of what is it that the government has failed to do, in the last year in terms of applications for this financial year. And of course, we visited some in the morning, and in the next hour, we will visit another NGO. But to get a sense of what exactly is happening at the legislature level, we are joined now by Mr. Philontseki, who is the shadow MEC for the Democratic Alliance in the Gauteng legislature, responsible for social development, to just get a sense of what exactly is it that's happening at the provincial government level in terms of this particular saga. I'm going to bring her in so that she gives us heads up from the perspective of the opposition parties in the legislature. We understand that Premier Panyazi is also meeting with the representative of the sector today into the afternoon. We also reach out to him as well. So, Mr. Secretary, thank you very much for your time. This is a very sensitive subject because we're talking about people who are looking after the most vulnerable people in society, young children, elderly citizens, people living with disabilities. What exactly is happening at the political level? Why are we having this mess now?
The adjudication process for the funding, which cost millions, was a mess from the department side. So to date, no NPOs have not received any money.
Talk to us about the mess. What are you talking about specifically? What is it that was not done that was meant to be done?
So I've had a lot of NPOs reaching out to me. A lot of NPOs, some of them are saying they haven't even had a site visit, which is a requisite for a tender process for them to qualify for funding. And some of them are saying, we haven't had a visit yet, so what's happening with the funding? And then I've also had some social workers reaching out to me to say that they have not been involved in the site visits for the NPO funding in terms of determining whether it's an old age home, a CYCC, or a facility for persons with disability. And what has then happened from there is that the MEC put out a media statement to say that the adjudication process is completed. It actually hasn't been completed. It's a complete balls up because social workers were not used to do site visits. From what we understand from some of the NPOs that have talked to me, they said they were visited by the Nasespani brigades from social development who are not qualified social work professionals to do the site visits. And during their visits, they could not even determine what to look out for in terms of what is required in a site visit. So once that process was completed, they tried to submit the report to the adjudication panel. From some of the whistleblowers I've been talking to, the adjudication panel then said they cannot be taking a report from the Nasespani brigades because it's not social work professionals. It is not legitimate, so that squashed the site visit report. Then we are now sitting where the social workers are the one that would normally load, that will sign SLAs and make sure that they load the payments. Normally the department would fund about 2,500 NPOs across those sectors we've talked about. And because of the mess, social workers are not prepared to get involved in the uploading of signing of SLAs, but they also don't want to do the funding requisitions in the department.
Let me come in, Secretary. You're talking about, a process that seems to be, compromised in terms of its credibility. Knowing the information that you are telling us now, what is it that you've done at the provincial level to ensure that you hold government accountable and are able to stop this? Because now we're at the actual end of this mess where NGOs are not getting the money they need, to run their operations. This is affecting the people on the ground, whereas at the legislative level, nothing seems to be, happening in terms of holding each other accountable.
I asked questions in the last sitting on the 16th of April. I had 3 questions through myself and colleagues that are in the DA that serve on social development to ascertain things about the adjudication panel. Member Mhlaba said she was ill, she didn't attend the sitting, and when she was supposed to respond to my questions, she then did not even answer. She sent a WhatsApp to the speaker claiming that she was sick. The speaker even reprimanded her and said that she could have forwarded her responses because yes, it's an oral question, but the responses are in writing. Those responses could have been given to another MEC to respond to me, because obviously I have to use the tools available to me in a parliamentary sitting in order to find answers in terms of what is happening with the adjudication process. To date, I have not gotten those responses. We are requesting responses from the 16th of April until now, and we still have not gotten response. And I'm saying to you, what is the MEC hiding that she's not sending me the responses to my oral questions when she could have just submitted it to the DA office so I can? The people of Gauteng have a right to know, because this is public funds that we are talking about. I think there's a humanitarian crisis looming because NPOs are closing down because they have not received funding.
I mean, from what I also read out, during my research, I found that some of the panelists might have walked away from the process itself. Are you aware of that issue? Panelists were supposed to do the adjudication of the applications, working out of that process. Are you aware of that? And what could be the reason, if you are aware of that?
I have spoken to a whistleblower who said 3 members of the panel walked away when they were sitting in Capital Hotel in Rosebank, citing that the process was irregular and they didn't want their names tarnished by this irregularity. So that's what I know in terms of the adjudication process. And that left about 9 people, because even the adjudication panel question was not responded to. But my understanding is there were 12 panelists and 3 walked away, citing that this process was highly irregular and they didn't want to tarnish their reputations by being involved in it.
My last question to you, Mrs. Again. Talk to us about the extent or the possible extent of the problem that we might encounter. How many NGOs are likely going to be affected or are already affected by this funding crisis within the social development?
With the 10 years that I've served in the Gauteng legislature, on average, the department funds about 2,500 NPOs. This is from homes for elder persons, our gogos, our bongo, remkulu, our persons with disability, our orphans and vulnerable children, CYCCs. So we are talking about 2,500 NPOs and on average serving about 100 people. So that talks about 250,000 people that are going to be affected by this mess. Member Mhlaba and her department.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. That's Iman, the member of the Gauteng legislature who's responsible for social development matters. She serves as the shadow MEC of social development. So in terms of the communication that we've received and the understanding that we have at this point, Iman, is that the Premier Lesufi Panyazam has got involved in this particular process, actually meeting the MEC yesterday and the finance MEC in Gauteng, Mr. Jacob Mamabulo, over this particular problem. And today he is scheduled to meet with the representatives of the sector, and we're expecting the Premier to be all out meeting all the affected NPOs tomorrow. So that's what is happening on this particular mess. But, in the next hour or so, we'll try to visit some of the affected NPOs so that we really look into the actual, impact on the ground, especially for those that are working, on daily basis with the people who are vulnerable and are dependent on the funding from social development.
Most important stakeholders in all of this, those directly affected and who are supposed to be beneficiaries of funding like this. Ziniko, thank you very much for that. Talking there about the elderly citizens, those with disabilities, and those who are offering home-based care services, all being affected now by what's been happening with the monthly grants and the fact that it's now been halted. So we'll keep tabs on what Ziniko is doing and where he is going to really begin to talk to and to understand those who are directly affected.